Number of items on today's agenda. 2 nominees have been listed for the first time and will be held over Ana de Alba, 9th Circuit, Irma Carrillo Ramirez, 5th Circuit. We'll vote today on the nomination of Shannon Saylor to be U.S. Marshal for the Eastern District of Virginia. We'll also vote on S-474, the Report Act, sponsored by Senators Blackburn and Ossoff. The other bill on the agenda is S-1080, the Cooper-Davis Act. This is a bipartisan bill that deals with the urgent problem of illicit fentanyl sales taking place over social media platforms. I want to thank the members who attended the briefing with the director of the Drug Enforcement Agency. Senator Blackburn was there, Senator Grassley, and those members who were also present. I think it was an eye-opener. It was a stunning presentation about the threat of fentanyl. At our hearing on kids' online safety in February, we heard the sobering testimony about how social media is now the pathway for fentanyl traffickers to reach their target market. Earlier this week, as I mentioned, we met with DEA. They went into graphic detail about this challenge to America. We need to take it extremely seriously as it's a matter of importance and relevance to this committee. The Cooper-Davis bill would create a reporting structure for social media companies to provide information about these illicit transactions to the DEA. I think the American public will become better informed as to why this is an urgent issue. We've been having good bipartisan negotiations over the past several weeks about how to appropriately tailor this reporting structure. I've held the bill over to allow these negotiations to continue. But I want to urge all members to look at this issue on a timely, relevant basis. We need to move forward on this matter and do it as quickly as possible and do it the right way. So I urge bipartisan cooperation to continue. I'll now turn to Ranking Member Graham for any opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I look forward to supporting the bills. Senator Blackburn, also appreciate what you've done. When it comes to fentanyl, we need to make sure it stays a Schedule I drug. The House passed a bill to make sure it doesn't change. I hope we could do that together. I think it'd be a terrible signal to try to move the penalties for fentanyl down at a time when it's a plague to the country. Real quickly, a little bit about Ukraine and the votes we're taking. As you know, I just got back. I'm very cautiously, actually strongly optimistic that due to the help we've provided the Ukraine and other allies, that you'll see some gains on the battlefield. They went from being basically would fold in 4 days to 460 plus days. They're on the verge of evicting Russians from great parts of Ukraine. I will not bore you with my concerns about the budget deal on defense. I will take that to the floor. But the one thing we need to understand here is that countering China takes more than words, that we're going to need more money for our military to effectively convince China we're serious about protecting our interest. Ukraine. All the good work we've done, Mr. Chairman, and you've been leading the effort along with just every colleague on that side. I'm supposed to talk to the president of Ukraine today. He wants to know what's going on. I'm going to say, Mr. President, I'm hopeful that President Biden will announce that this deal doesn't mean we pull the plug on Ukraine. Hope President Biden will announce that when it comes to countering China, there will be more opportunities to do it. It will be so irresponsible for us to pass this bill without providing clarity to Ukraine and Russia as to where the United States will be in terms of the efforts to liberate Ukraine. I am hopeful that Senator Schumer will reassure me and others that there will be a supplemental down the road to help our military, Ukraine, and other matters that may pop up. I'm hopeful the President will announce to the world that this budget deal doesn't mean the end of America's support to evict Putin. I don't want to stay here to Tuesday, but we'll be here to Tuesday until I hear that. Thank you.
Senator Graham, you and I share the same feelings about Ukraine and support for the people and their valiant effort to expel this war criminal, Vladimir Putin, and his troops. This budget negotiation we went through was not brought on by the president And I think he's made it clear that his commitment to Ukraine has not diminished in any way, and I hope he'll be sufficiently explicit to win your support as well. I want to make certain that at the end of the day, there's no question whatsoever to the brave people of Ukraine that the United States stands behind them on a bipartisan basis. And I think this committee is a good illustration of that. We now have, if there's no one seeking recognition, we now have the nomination of Shannon Saylor for U.S. Marshal for the Eastern District of Virginia. I understand we can voice vote Mr. Saylor. Does anyone seek recognition on this nomination? On favorably reporting the nomination of Shannon Saylor to be U.S. Marshal for the Eastern District of Virginia, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Opinion of the chair have it. The ayes have it. The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next up is S474, the Report Act, sponsored by Senators Blackburn and Ossoff, seeking to strengthen reporting to the cyber tip line of online sexual exploitation of children. It does so by requiring providers to submit reports concerning apparent child sex trafficking and online enticement or coercion of children. Under this legislation, the maximum criminal fine for a provider's failure is increased. The bill also creates immunity for victims of CSAM to report information about the circulation of their imagery to the cyber tip line, requires providers to preserve evidence related to cyber tip for a period of 1 year and an increase over the current 90-day preservation requirement. Finally, the bill includes a narrow immunity provision for cloud storage, provides under the contract with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children so they can store information related to the operation of the cyber tip line and other programs. I now want to turn to the bill's sponsors, Senators Blackburn and Ossoff, for remarks, and I believe they're going to offer a manager's amendment. Senator Blackburn, you're recognized.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we do call up the manager's amendment. And as I do that, I want to thank Senator Ossoff and his team for the work that they have done on this issue and getting this bill ready to go. I have grandchildren that are just turning 15, just turning 14, and just turning 3. And as I'm out and about with them, one of the things I get asked most by moms and dads of their friends, those children, is how in the world are we going to be able to protect children with what is happening in the virtual space? Because laws that we have in the physical space don't necessarily match up with what is going on in the virtual space. The presentation we had from the DEA on fentanyl and what is happening there is astounding. What we have heard, Senator Blumenthal and I have done so much work on addressing what parents are confronting online with child sexual abuse, with enticement, with the way these children are meeting drug dealers and sex predators. And Mr. Chairman, you've done so much on the CSAM issue. So the Report Act is there to help bolster protections for children in this virtual space. Now, several critical provisions, as you have just mentioned. First, as you said, increasing the fines imposed on the platforms that fail to report this child sex abuse to NCMEC. That is vitally important because there has got to be some pain inflicted on these platforms because they turn a blind eye and they don't do it. So increasing these penalties really does strengthen the platform's duty to report, which we have to make certain that they carry out that duty to report and ensure that they are doing their part to root out these bad actors. Additionally, the bill makes it clear that platforms must now report content that includes sex trafficking of children or enticement to NCMEC's cyber tip line. It addresses some concerns from my Democratic colleagues. We removed the requirement on imminent reporting, but of course you have that requirement in the CSAM bill. I think that's important. We removed that from this particular bill. Now, the Report Act also includes legislation that I had worked on last year, and I thank Senator Graham for his support on those efforts. The End Child Exploitation Act, which requires our online platforms to preserve the reports to NCMEC's cyber tip line for 1 year. Now, the reason we're doing this is because as we worked with law enforcement, what we found out was that the shorter time period did not give them time to get that information and move these cases to prosecution. So they needed the extra time, and the bill provides limited liability protections to certain vendors working to support NCMEC's operation, which would allow NCMEC to hire cloud vendors to store and transfer report contents to law enforcement. Again, another vital and important provision that we are putting in place. But I want to, again, thank Senator Ossoff and his team, and you and your team, Mr. Chairman, as well as Senator Graham. We look forward to moving this bill out today.
Thank you, Senator Blackburn. Senator Ossoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank and commend Senator Blackburn for her extraordinary leadership and for her tenacious commitment to improving child safety online. And I got an 18-month-old baby daughter at home. I know Senator Blackburn speaks often and passionately about her concern for the welfare of her grandchildren. And I know every parent across the country, frankly, is terrified about what can happen to kids on the internet. And so this bipartisan legislation bringing Republicans and Democrats together at a time of such division in the Congress to ensure that tech companies are held accountable to report and remove child sex abuse material and to strengthen protection for kids online is timely, it's essential. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the ranking member for your cooperation and support in bringing this forward today. And I urge the whole committee and the Senate on a bipartisan basis to advance this urgent legislation and protect kids on the internet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ossoff, I don't know if the press is covering this hearing. It's probably unlikely that they are, but I wish they would, to listen to the speeches we just heard from you and from Senator Blackburn, and to realize that on this issue, this committee has come together in an extraordinary and historic way. I consider this to be the fifth element of a package which we have passed unanimously in the United States Senate Judiciary Committee, responding to the very real concern that parents and families have across America about this exploitation, and putting for the first time in law a responsibility on social media to respond to this concern and to show us that they're willing to work hard to clean up this terrible scourge across our country. We have heard the testimony from hearings of the victims and their surviving parents, and it's just awful. It is, to think that that might happen to someone in our own families is horrifying. We have a chance now, I hope we do, to seize this moment with this package of 5 bills, basically all agreed to by this committee on a unanimous basis, and to promote these on the floor as a major undertaking of the Senate Judiciary Committee on a bipartisan basis. And this bill, the Report Act, would certainly be an able or a worthy element in that passage.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, real quick.
Senator Graham?
Congratulations to both of you. You're right about Senator Blackburn. She's on this very strong advocate for protecting children from exploit. And Senator Ossoff, thank you. This is a big deal. I don't want to throw a blanket over this. Good work by the committee. We'll see what happens on the floor. But if these bills die, we need to change the game. So I will be introducing an elimination of Section 230 in 2 years. I need your help because they'll never come to this committee or this body, the social media companies, until they believe their liabilities in jeopardy. I hope I'm wrong. But if they're listening, if the Russians are listening and the social media world is listening, victory to Ukraine, the end of 230.
Senator, I don't oppose that effort. I think that should be the next step, should we not succeed on the floor. But shame on us if we don't try.
Amen.
We have 5 bills here. They are strong bipartisan bills. I can't remember another time that the committee has produced these measures on a unanimous basis. Let's seize this moment and this momentum to urge our leadership, both on the Democratic and Republican side, to make this a timely issue on the floor. Now, pending before us is the manager's amendment by Senators Blackburn and Ossoff. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The manager's amendment is adopted. If there's no one else seeking recognition on this measure, I'm going to call for final passage. On favorably reporting S-474, the Report Act, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The majority of members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The bill will be favorably reported to the floor. And at this point, is there any further business coming before the committee?
Chairman.
Senator Whitehouse.
First, let me congratulate Senator Blackburn and Senator Ossoff on this bill and the smooth passage of it. A lot of work takes place before such a smooth passage, and it's much appreciated. I just wanted to respond to Senator Graham's Ukraine comments, because our ranking member and you, Mr. Chairman, have been such powerful advocates for support for Ukraine. As a result of the work of this committee, we've stood up the klepto capture effort in the executive branch that is hotly pursuing the assets of corrupt Russian oligarchs. Funds from seized properties of Russian oligarchs have already begun to flow into Ukraine to support that effort. The 2 questions that remain for us, one, thanks to the hearing that you held, Mr. Chairman, that brought the Deputy Attorney General, Lisa Monaco, in, we are getting more response out of the Department of Justice as to what their position is going to be on seizure of sovereign funds of the Russian government. I continue to believe that, acting in concert with other nations, we should be able to seize those funds of this criminal regime and put them to work on behalf of victims of Russia's atrocities in Ukraine. But I think pressure from this committee has been very important in pushing that decision point forward in the administration, and we need to continue that pressure. The second thing is we are still stuck with a seizure system in which a Russian oligarch has better protection for his multi-million-dollar super yacht than an American citizen does driving along the highway who gets pulled over and has $40,000 in cash seized from his car. That makes no sense. What we should do for Russian oligarchs, or for, frankly, perhaps anybody as to whom the president has designated there's a national security concern, is to make sure that we can move what lawyers in the room would understand by in rem, that the proceeding isn't through all the screens and veils and corporate structures and Cypriot accounts and all the nonsense that is used to obscure the ownership of these yachts. The proceeding is against the yacht. And if you've got a claim to that damn yacht, show up in court and make your claim and prove that you're the true beneficial owner. I think what we'll find is a lot of people aren't going to show up. But to continue to require the United States government to go through all the hoops of trying to prove ownership before the seizure, I think puts the situation backwards. And again, by giving Russian oligarchs with billion-dollar yachts more rights than an American regarding the seizure of property, it just doesn't make any logical sense either. So I'm hoping we can solve that problem in this committee, in this Congress, and unleash even more and more effective effort by the Department of Justice and the coordinated klepto capture effort against these billionaire resources.
Thanks,
Thank you, Chairman, for all your hard work in
Thanks,
this area
Senator
and your
Whitehouse.
leadership.
We have requests for by Senator Klobuchar and Senator Coons and Senator Blumenthal to speak. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. I want to follow up on Senator Graham's remarks on Section 230 and thank him for his work and for being ahead of his time on this issue. When this first came up, I thought, well, there's got to be other things that we can do short of that. And yes, this is an example of Senator Ossoff and Senator Blackburn's good work. We have several examples of that on the committee, but every single time we bring major things to the floor, whether it is the bill Senator Kennedy and I have on just a modicum of negotiations for the news organizations, for little radio stations, we get stopped by big tech. Senator Grassley and I, we appreciate your support on the bill, Senator Graham. The bill that was discussed when we had the child privacy discussion, very pointedly by Senator Grassley, which simply puts in place some protections for competition so that they can't keep putting their own products over small businesses on the top of their search engine, things that they are actually agreeing to in other countries, consumer measures in that bill, and yet they spend $300 million against the bill. Go after me personally with pop-up ads saying I'm going to destroy Google Maps and FaceTime just to scare all of you because they run them in Washington so you see them. Those are the kinds of tactics they're using. So if we don't stand up in a big way and at least start getting things through this committee, even if they're not unanimous votes, Mr. Chairman, because they're not all going to be unanimous votes. They're not even going to be partisan votes. There's going to be some people that disagree. But if we don't start pushing this issue by issue by issue and getting things to the floor, then people say, well, the House won't pass anything. Well, nothing is going to get done. We as a country are going to sit and let more kids get hooked on this, more kids get killed by fentanyl because we're not doing anything about it, as we know that this is the go-to place for the cartels to advertise right now. And we're going to have more of this going on unless, given that we are incapable, it appears, of passing things, except, yes, small, narrow things, if we're incapable of doing anything to regulate all of this, we at least have to open up Section 230 because there is no way other media companies, and that's what they are, would be able to run ads with little pills that have fentanyl in them on TV. No, that wouldn't happen. They'd be sued for doing that. They wouldn't be able to put kind of stuff that the kids are being exposed to on TV ads because it would violate our laws. So why don't we put some laws in place for these guys? It doesn't mean that every post will be prosecuted. It simply means that they can't use their algorithms to make money off of this bad stuff that they're putting on the internet that they're getting people hooked onto. That's what this is about. This is about profiting off of these kinds of posts. It's not about individual First Amendment that people are putting one post out there. It's when they start profiting off of it and expanding it and putting it out there. And so the only way you do something about it at this point, if we are so afraid to act, and that is the only word, and Senator Grassley used similar language last week, is that we're going to have to get rid of Section 230, which probably should have never been there in the first place, and this whole ecosystem wouldn't have been set up the way it is.
Senator Coons?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I respect and appreciate my colleagues' steady engagement, deep passion, and determination to make a difference in this field, and I think the ranking member has thrown down an intriguing, challenging, and I suspect action-forcing proposal. Two things, if I could, to follow up on comments that have been made. I spoke with the DEA administrator about xylazine and its impact. It has first been felt in the Philadelphia region, but it is spreading throughout our country. This is called trank dope. It is something that makes fentanyl even deadlier because it is a veterinary sedative that's used on, cows, horses, and rhinoceroses to put them down. And it's being cut into fentanyl all over the country. It prevents Narcan from bringing an overdose victim back. And it is rapidly increasing the amount of deaths as a result of fentanyl. And it's something that needs attention and legislation to balance legitimate veterinary uses with rapidly emerging human uses. This is something my wife is an active volunteer in caring for those who are suffering from the horrific wounds that it causes. I hope we will take that up as well. And to the point made by Senator Whitehouse, a bipartisan group of us went to The Hague. We modified legislation. We urged the administration to support the ICC, to bring to accountability Russia for its atrocities in Ukraine. We need to persist on this point in this committee and in the Foreign Relations Committee yesterday. We had a hearing on it, delivering accountability for Russia's war crimes, whether through seizure of assets or through international fora, is a moral obligation of this Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Coons. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I second strongly the points made by Senator Whitehouse and Senator Kuhn, not only on the procedural issues relating to seizure, but also on the transfer of those assets to the Ukrainians so that they can use them in their valiant fight against Russia's murderous aggression. We're on the verge of a historic counteroffensive. I thank Senator Graham for his continuing advocacy. I've been proud to join him, and I think that we need to be prepared as we go forward in these next weeks and months to provide even more resources in a potential supplemental for Ukraine. And finally, on the issue that you and the ranking member have led, Mr. Chairman, I think we should take these 5 bills to the floor. I join Senator Graham in feeling that we need to put a time limit on Section 230, abolish it in 2 years. I would abolish it now. I have advocated for 15 years that it be abolished. And I was told 15 years ago I was crazy to think that it could be. But I think that this discussion shows there now is a critical mass in the United States Senate to say to big tech, you have exhausted this shield. You no longer need it. You don't deserve it. You have betrayed the trust of the American people by allowing pills that are illegal to be sold on the internet to persist on your sites. You have aided and abetted, in effect, the sales of fentanyl, and the time for abolishing Section 230 is now. So I hope we will begin by taking these 5 bills to the floor, and I commend my colleague, Senator Blackburn, for her great work on the Kids Online Safety Act, which I think perhaps should be part of this package as well, because it fits the topic and the goal, even though it is outside the jurisdiction of this committee. And I thank Senator Ossoff and Senator Blackburn for their work on the bill that we've just approved.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Feinstein.
yes, I would just like to thank the senator for his remarks. I think they were well taken, and I hope they were listened to. So I thank him very much.
Thank you, Senator. I think Senator Booker is seeking recognition.
I just want to be very brief. Again, I want to add to the gratitude to Senator Ossoff, Senator Blackburn for this legislation. I want to associate myself with the comments of Lindsey Graham. This is a very important time. If I'm coming back from a European swing where everyone was concerned about the continuing American commitment and leadership when it comes to this war effort, and very concerned in connecting the debt ceiling debate and fight to that continued. So I agree with Senator Graham wholly. I want to just say to Senator Whitehouse's point, countries from Canada to Estonia are taking measures legislatively to pass rules to make the seizures of assets more available for the Ukrainian effort. I think not only for the war effort, but we've got to start looking forward like we did in the 1940s before the end of World War II to Ukrainian reconstruction. This possibly, the seizure of assets, could be one source of resources in the recovery as well, and I'm looking forward to working with other members of the committee on that.
If no one else seeks recognition, this meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee stands adjourned.